What's up guys, it's Johnny Candido of Candido Training HQ. I was originally going to make two separate videos, one on how I got into powerlifting and another on my motivation to train. But since those are both very similar and they basically merge together, I've decided just to make one video on both those topics. It began at around the 7th or 8th grade for me because that's when I started lifting weights. And the person who introduced it to me was my father. And I actually had a big head start because my dad was already into lifting weights for a very long time. Now he's been lifting for over 30 years, and he actually has more lean body mass than I do, and he's 59 years old. So that really gave me a big head start, as I said, because he knew all the basic information. I was already on an upper-lower split when I first started, and this really helped for sports, which is what I was training for. But what was kind of funny is that at this time, I didn't take it very seriously because obviously I was pretty young, so it really took until freshman year of high school before I actually lifted consistently, because it just wasn't enjoyable until then. So freshman year of high school I was probably benching around 110 pounds, and what's funny is I didn't actually squat until sophomore year of high school. So I lifted just upper body, and then I believe I leg pressed before then. But when I started squatting I was 15 years old, and I was a sophomore in high school. And I remember I squatted 250 for one rep, and then I tried 275 and I missed it. So I think my max was around 265. I know people ask if I was just naturally good at squatting, and I would say that that's definitely true to an extent. That it definitely was a lot easier, and I remember the first time I squatted that it felt very natural to me and it felt very normal to hit depth. But I wasn't really interested in powerlifting at all. I didn't really know anything about it. I was just training for general strength. For sports, as I said, I played both basketball and ran track. So up until senior year of high school, my numbers were okay, but they weren't anything amazing. I think it was around a 250 bench, maybe 240. And then for the squat, I think it was only 325. And I actually did not deadlift at all in high school. I lifted all throughout high school, but nobody really noticed at all until senior year. And it was funny, but I think that this actually helped me a great deal with my own training, because this allowed me to just train for myself rather than trying to impress other people. Going into college, I competed in track for 2 years as a long jumper, but it was just at a small D3 school. It's nothing extremely impressive at all, but that was what really motivated me to continue to train. And this is what motivated me to focus on increasing my squat max especially. So it was really that transition where I was able to get a lot stronger. I was able to go from squatting 325 to, I believe, 395 going into my freshman year of college. And then I remember my squat max was 465 my sophomore year. I remember thinking when I was growing up training for sports that I almost just assumed that people were way stronger than they were. So I was extremely surprised when I went to college and I was stronger than pretty much all the football players. I'm thinking in my head that everybody's squatting 500, 600, 700 pounds for professional athletes. And then I realized that not everyone's necessarily that strong. During my freshman year, what I did was I competed in track, and then I looked into powerlifting in the off season. And what was funny is what got me into powerlifting was I looked up the numbers needed to qualify to the USAPL national meet, and I saw that I was able to achieve those numbers. They didn't seem too far off. But what I didn't realize was that those numbers were for equipped lifting. So for some reason those numbers were set quite low, and thankfully so. But that's what motivated me. See, for Raw Nationals, you actually don't need a qualifying total, you just need to compete. But had I known that, I don't know if I would have had the incentive to actually compete and try to qualify for this national meet. So I was quite lucky I made that mistake. I started deadlifting then and entered into my first meet, and I hit that qualifying total, which I thought I needed to hit. But that just gave me the motivation to compete, which is all I needed to do. And then at the Raw National Meet, I have a video on my channel of the 2011 Raw National Meet. I got second in my age and weight class. So after that national meet, I didn't really know what to think because I was training so hard for track, but I couldn't even escape mediocrity in that sport. But then when it comes to powerlifting, I wasn't even really training for that specifically. I wasn't even deadlifting until 2 months maybe before the national meet. And it just came so much more naturally, and I was able to excel so much quicker. So that's when I knew I wanted to pursue the sport of powerlifting and take the training seriously. I did compete one more year in track, but I wasn't as focused, and I was definitely prioritizing my strength training above my track training. And then after that 1 year, then I just focused purely on getting as strong as possible. So overall, I've been lifting in general for about 7 or 8 years, squatting for about 5 years, and deadlifting for about 3 years. Alright, now I want to quickly get into my motivation for training. And this is connected to my history of lifting and with sports, because the motivation for me for training has never really just been for competition. It's always been for improving myself and improving my overall just athleticism and strength through the lifts rather than just for the lifts. And that's a subtle distinction, but one that is important, because I see all the time where people just want to try to sneak up as many pounds as possible on their total. And I think that this can work, but mentally, if you just think about you just want to get better at performing the movements, sometimes it can be harder moving forward because you're thinking, what am I doing to get better at these lifts? I'm just doing them over and over again. But if you think about the lifts improving yourself, then it's easier to just focus on the volume and focus on just getting stronger through the lifts. Don't just think about taking the same body and trying to just make it better at those specific lifts. Rather, think about those lifts actually changing your body with each workout, actually making you stronger, making you able to produce force more efficiently, able to build more muscle each workout. And something I want to bring up about my motivation to lift weights is that I've seen that it contrasts with how other people talk about lifting weights and how other people talk about their training when it comes to especially powerlifting, but also bodybuilding. And that is, I see people talk about it like it's this sacrifice, like they're putting in such hard work, like it's such a grind to train to go to the gym. And to me, I just don't see it that way. I'm not saying that this way's right or that you should feel like this, but I've never thought that I worked hard in the gym. I've never thought that to myself, that a set of squats was hard work. To me, it's fun. That's why I do it. If it wasn't fun, then I would literally just stop lifting weights. This may seem obvious, but it seems quite common in our society today to have this warrior-like mentality when it comes to lifting weights. And I think that this can actually hurt your training if you have this, because what it does is you're essentially convincing yourself that you wouldn't like training otherwise, that you're forcing yourself to do it, and it's mental toughness that you fight through it. But if you're honest with yourself and you just train for the sheer enjoyment of it, it becomes much easier to consistently train no matter your environment. You know, I don't train at a hardcore powerlifting gym, I just train by myself, and I have no problems with motivation because I simply love lifting weights. And this brings me to my last point. I have to be completely honest when I say that I am obsessed with lifting weights. That's simply the reason why I get stronger, is because I think about lifting, I think about everything around it so often that it essentially drives me to always improve myself, to always make those small adjustments, to find out what I need to do to constantly get better. I see the common phrase where people say that obsessed is what the lazy call the dedicated. But I say if you're just dedicated, then you're gonna get beat by someone who is obsessed. Because if you're obsessed with something and you just love doing it, you love thinking about it, the concept of it, and then the actualization of it, then you're going to improve at a way faster rate than everyone else. And I can't really say that you should be obsessed. It's really just a matter of how much you enjoy lifting. But this is definitely something that always keeps me motivated. This is the reason why I'll always be training in the gym for the rest of my life. Regardless of these powerlifting competitions, I just simply love strength training. I will say that the powerlifting meets do give me a lot of extra motivation as well, as far as trying to break certain records, and I want to compete in world meets in the future. So that also helps add to the motivation, as well as my just natural passion for lifting weights, as I mentioned. I also want to say, I bet a lot of you guys are obsessed with lifting weights as well. If you think about it, I bet you're subscribed to a couple other YouTube channels at least. Probably 5, 10, maybe 15 other YouTube channels that talk about fitness. You watch videos about lifting weights, you lift weights, you might be thinking about lifting weights 6 hours every single day. So if you're really doing that, you should expect to get better. Imagine someone thinking about something that long and not improving. It really should almost be impossible. Alright guys, that's all I wanted to say. Thanks for watching. Make sure to like the video to support the channel. Subscribe if you haven't already. And thanks for watching, guys. Peace!
Cause this is for the fans who truly understand. Real all the time. All my fam.